What's up, guys? Imran here from the Stuff They Should Have Taught Us podcast. And on this episode, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the do's and don'ts of credit cards. So, the first major recommendation I have for when you guys are using credit cards is to always make sure you pay off your bill before the end of the billing cycle. So, if your billing cycle is 30 days, if you pay off your credit card bill before the end of the cycle, it won't report on your credit report, and that way your utilization will always be low. So there's two main benefits to doing this. The first one being that when your utilization is low, it'll keep your score high, and the second one is that if you pay off your credit cards before the end of the billing cycle, it'll guarantee that you don't have any balances that are accruing interest. So another recommendation that I have is to always put small charges on your credit cards, particularly things like subscriptions. So for people who are new to learning how to use credit responsibly, this is a really good way to get your activity up on your credit cards without having to fully use them instead of your debit cards. So if you don't trust yourself yet, it's a very good way to segue into it. And when you put small recurring charges, you can build up that habit in your monthly or weekly finance routines to go in and pay those off. So a good example would be like Netflix, Spotify, Apple Music, anything that you guys are subscribed to on a recurring basis. It's something good to put on a credit card, just so that it's a very low risk way to get used to that responsibility that you're going to need to have. So the next do I have for credit card usage is for those of you who have multiple credit cards, make sure you're maximizing your cash back on the cards that you already have. Make sure you're using the right cards for the right things. You don't want to be using travel cards for groceries or grocery cards for travel, those kinds of things, because that's money you're literally missing out on. Just by making sure you're using the right cards with the right purchases, you'll be able to maximize your cash back, which is one of the more lucrative benefits of actually having credit cards. And for those of you who don't want to go through the trouble of actually tracking which cards are used for which cash back, I would just opt for a flat cashback card, a card that gives you a flat amount of cash back on all purchases. One really good one is the PayPal MasterCard. It's one that a lot of people don't actually know about, but it's just a flat 2% cash back on all purchases, and you can get that cash back directly into your PayPal account. So pretty cool. So the next do is always make sure you're checking your credit card terms of agreement. There are some more predatory banks that give out credit cards that have a lot of hidden fees or really high interest rates. So on the off chance that you do find yourself in a situation where you may not be able to pay off your card, just make sure you're using the card that has the lowest interest rate. And along with checking those agreements, just make sure that if your card has an annual fee, that you're aware of it, and also you're aware of when that hits on your billing cycles or when that hits in the year. A lot of credit cards will waive the annual fee for the first year, and a lot of people forget about that. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind when you apply for your credit card, and when you're using it. So now that we covered the do's of responsible credit card usage, I'm going to start covering some of the things that you should never do under any circumstance unless it's an emergency. So the first thing that you should never do with your credit card unless it's an emergency is do what's called a cash advance. A cash advance is when you use your credit line in order to pull out cash from an ATM, essentially. And cash advances usually have a high fee. Sometimes it's like $5 to $10 depending on the credit card. And usually you have a high interest rate that hits immediately. This is because credit card companies mainly use the data about your purchases and sell that. But when you're doing a cash advance, it's not advantageous for the credit card company because they don't get any data about any transactions. You're just using that as a line of credit and you're pulling out cash. And credit card companies don't like that. So if you have to use it in case of an emergency, like if your debit card doesn't work, it's fine. But make sure you're paying those off immediately because the interest rates on your cash advance are often higher than your normal credit card interest rates. One tip that I just got from my friend Mozum is that you can actually circumvent this by using Venmo, because Venmo transactions on some cards don't actually run up as a cash advance. You can do the same thing with the Cash App and then automatically send that money to your bank account. And that way you're paying a 3% fee instead of a 26% fee. But like I said, only use this in case of emergencies, because either way you do it, there's a very good chance that you're going to end up paying some fee in order to be lending that money from your credit card company. That same note, I'm going to say never use your credit card as a mechanism for loans or as a credit line. You never want to use it to borrow money. There are much better ways to borrow money that have lower interest rates. One way you can be smart about this, if you are left to do something like this, is to use a card that has a 0% interest rate. But like I said, it's easy to fall into a lot of those traps and end up borrowing money that you won't be able to pay off in the future. So the last don't on my list for credit cards is going to be never max out your cards or never bring your utilization above anything more than 30 or 35%. This is just because it's going to negatively impact your credit score, and that's the last thing we want to do. So just make sure you're keeping your utilization low. Never max out your cards, and you should be able to not fall into a lot of the traps that credit card companies have set up for us. Keep in mind that the entire credit system was built to take advantage of us. So the best thing you can do to be responsible is to make sure you're reading the terms and agreements, make sure you're keeping up on your payments, and that way you won't get taken advantage of. Anyway, guys, I hope this helps you learn how to use credit cards responsibly. If you love the podcast, be sure to click the link in the episode description to become a supporter. It would help keep this podcast ad-free. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and share this with your friends, and I wish you luck in the rest of your financial journey.